Today, we are joined by John Cassara, a former CIA intelligence officer and one of the world's leading experts on terrorist financing, money laundering, and illicit financial networks, with decades of experience tracking how extremist groups and corrupt regimes move money across borders. And as the author of Hunting Money, Cassara brings rare insight into how financial warfare is reshaping global security and U.S. policy today. John, you are most welcome.
Thank you, Maria. It's a pleasure to be here with you and also to interact with your guests.
Yeah, sure. My first question is how has financial crime evolved into a primary battlefield of modern geopolitics, and is the Trump administration fully using the tools available to them?
Well, it's a good question. Yes, that the financial crimes is becoming a new battlefield in geopolitics. And there's lots of examples, but the one that is foremost in my mind right now is the subject of my recent book. I wrote a book on China. I called it CCP Inc., Transnational Crime and Money Laundering, because I felt that China is the largest transnational criminal actor today and largest money laundering center in the world today. And I looked at about the top 12, what we call specified unlawful activities or predicate offenses to charge money laundering, things your audience are aware of: narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, illicit tobacco, trafficking in wildlife, intellectual property rights violations, counterfeiting. In almost every category, China leads the world.
Wow.
China leads the world. And if you total up their involvement
with
in
Iran,
all this, it's roughly $2 trillion a year.
Of
$2 trillion a year. And they estimate, like the IMF estimates very roughly, there's a total of $4 to $5 trillion of money laundering a year. So China's responsible for roughly half of the money laundering in the world today, looking at specified unlawful activities. It's a tremendous problem.
Where come the joint efforts with Iran? What is the ranking of Iran, the mullah regime?
What is the ranking of the mullahs as far as money laundering? I used to work in the Department of State. I was detailed there from the Treasury Department for years and years and years. This was, again, in the early 2000s, and we did an annual report, the International Narcotics Control Strategy Report. It was a congressionally mandated report, looked at countries around the world in money laundering. And at the time, first of all, the State Department designated Iran as a state sponsor of terror. But it was really difficult to get good information, good intelligence on the state of the theocratic regimes in Iran's money laundering. Obviously, it's horrible. It's going on. It's despicable what's happening right now in that country, how they're persecuting and murdering their own citizens. But as far as having accurate information about the extent of it, putting a money value on it, I don't think the numbers are there.
It's a bit difficult. Let's talk about what's going on in Minnesota. We're gonna do an interview with you, combining local news, current news, and foreign affairs. So, who failed to oversight process that allowed the Feeding Our Future fraud to reach multi-million-dollar levels? This is incredible.
It is incredible. And the short answer is that there was a total failure in our country at the federal, state, and local level. I mean, there's culpability around. And I think that this has gotten world headlines, in fact, about how there's been fraud in the state of Minnesota on government welfare programs, primarily, and the Somali community in Minneapolis has been particularly targeted on this. But I think, Maria, there's a bigger issue here, and that is fraud in government programs in general. not too many years ago, we thought the greatest source of illicit crime in the United States was the proceeds of narcotics trafficking, estimated about $100 billion a year. But a couple of years ago, there were government reports put out, congressional watchdog agencies and Department of Treasury, that they say, no, that's not true anymore. It's fraud against government programs, which is now just growing exponentially. They estimate somewhere in the area of about $500, $700 billion a year. Scott Besson, our department, or the head of our Department of Treasury, recently came out. He estimated about 10% of our U.S. government budget is probably waste, fraud, and abuse.
It's gonna take decades to reestablish a clear program, government program. I mean, there's lots of work that the Trump administration has to do in this field, in this regard.
Well, yeah, the problem is the Trump administration, I'll try to keep politics out of this, is cleaning up the messes he inherited. Most of this fraud has grown exponentially, particularly during the we call it Obamacare or Medicare, Medicaid welfare programs, health programs. And then it was put on steroids during the Biden administration during the COVID programs. And there was very, very little, oversight. And the Biden administration just wanted to shovel money out the door without really any enforcement. It's just been a real mess.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just like to bring up while we're on this topic, because it's a great example of something that I coined the term, 15 years ago, I call service-based money laundering. Service-based money laundering. We might talk about trade-based money laundering later. You're looking at money laundering vis-a-vis commodities. Service-based money laundering is exactly what I said. It's based on services. It could be oil exploration fees. It could be accounting fees, attorney fees. It could be computer programming. I was in Serbia a number of years ago, and they were looking at Serbian organized crime producing invoices for music concert promotion fees.
Oh my gosh.
And what they were doing, it was basically saying that, yeah, we did a rock concert, say, submitting an invoice for payment. That was an attempt to launder money. Payment was made abroad to Cyprus, and they wanted my help on, Mr. John, can you help us follow the money?
Yeah.
I saw these things when I was in Italy for 6 years fighting the mafia. The Italian mafia looked at this as well. I mean, as far as service invoicing, they brought it to a new level. And now it's in the United States. It all evolves around manipulating invoices.
To be fair with immigrants and minority community, they think that this process is targeting them. So how can authorities address fraud cases without unfairly stigmatizing entire community or immigrant like they are living in America, whatever?
Well, I understand this is a source of some contention. But we have a symbol in the United States, our Department of Justice. It has a statue of a lady.
Yeah.
And she has
Lady
blindfold, Lady
Justice.
Justice. She has a blindfold and she has scales. Lady Justice wears a blindfold. Okay. So it shouldn't matter whose nationality or religious group or whatever it is. We look at this. And I was in law enforcement for 26 years. So federal law enforcement. So we didn't really care what anybody's nationality was. We followed the money and we looked at the crime. Greed, avarice. In Christianity, we say it's one of the 7 deadly sins. It's part of the human condition. Everybody is caught up in that.
Don't steal. I have another question regarding Iran sanctions, and this is a topic like Mark Savaya's special envoy for Iraq is now saying we have to fix the fraud and the like the system is wrong. They are hiding this money. Iran is using Iraq to hide its money. They are using Iran to bypass US and EU sanction, particularly through trade-based money laundering. This mission is very, it's almost impossible. So what you can tell us from your expertise in this regard?
Well, once again, I was I was one of the first people to recognize trade-based money laundering back in the early 1990s. I think I came up with the expression or the phrase trade-based money laundering along with a colleague of mine in customs. Um, Trade-based money laundering, I'm sure your audience is mostly aware of it, but the Financial Action Task Force defines it as it's basically as disguising the proceeds of crime and moving value through the use of trade transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Very commonly, it's again over and under invoicing. But if you total up all the different parts of trade-based money laundering, it
Mm.
involves things like underground financial systems, Hawala, the Chinese Fai Chen or flying money, VAT fraud, so many others. It's probably the largest money laundering methodology in the world, but it's also the least known, recognized, and enforced. But the Iranians, for example, they are very, very skilled um, at
They,
manipulating
yeah, the
trade
system.
for their
And
purposes.
they are using, you were using Maduro regime as well. Do you have any like
Yes,
stories and real facts to tell us here?
yes, they have been abusing the Maduro regime. There's tremendous presence of we label terror groups in Iran. I'm sorry, in Venezuela
Mm.
that have worked closely with the Maduro regime to launder money vis-a-vis trade, vis-a-vis the misuse of the international gold trade. Um, the other thing when we talk about trade-based money laundering, a lot of your audience knows that in Hawala, for example, and Hawala is very, very common in the Middle East, in Iran, and then they have the enclaves in South America and Africa, all around the world. But what most people don't understand is historically and culturally, trade, the misuse of trade is used to balance the books or provide countervaluation between brokers. And once again, this is where TBML, trade-based money laundering, comes into play. I
But why still the TBML schemes one of the biggest blind spots in the global financial system?
Because we don't recognize it, because it's hard. Trade cases are very hard to make. They're complex to make. Financial crimes in general often take a couple of years. A long-term complex money laundering case might take 2 years or more. In trade-based money laundering, a lot of people just don't understand it. Financial crimes investigators, it's very difficult for them. Customs services around the world, not the United States, but most customs services, they get involved with inspection and control, but they don't do investigations. And then they pass it off to say, the fiscal police or the drug police or something like that. They don't have any expertise in customs matters.
Mm.
Um, it's and to get prosecutions, at least in this country, the United States, trade cases aren't considered very sexy. They don't have a lot of jury appeal. They're difficult to understand. So there's not a lot of work there to be done. But yet, as I emphasize, TBML could very well be the largest money laundering methodology in the world, but we're not doing much to combat it.
Okay, we talked about China, we talked about Iran. What about Russia? It seems like Russia is involved to create a parallel financial system. Are we witnessing the emergence of an alternative financial architecture designed to shield sanctions regimes? And how dangerous is that?
I think it's very dangerous, but Marie, I think this again is symptomatic of a larger issue that's coming at us that most people don't grasp yet. and that's the development of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. There's approximately 137 countries around the world that are developing CBDCs right now. Basically, your national currency, but in digital form. So paper money, for example, will go away. The Chinese regime, the CCP, are pioneering this. Russia has taken great strides in pioneering this CBDC. Now, there are various models. Some are somewhat benign, some are kind of mixed. But the one that concerns me the most is what we call the authoritarian model, one put in place by Russia, by China. Iran is working on such a thing as well, because if you combine CBDCs with state surveillance, you absolutely, positively control your population. You can demonetize somebody.
Can you explain what is CBDC's meanings and how it works for our audience?
Sure. For example, everybody's familiar with, say, Bitcoin, for example, as a digital currency. All right. So the idea that started taking root, say, 5-6 years ago, was to create a digital form of a country's currency. For example, a digital US dollar, or a digital euro, for example, instead of a paper currency, but have it a cyber currency. But it would, instead of being in effect private, right, like a Bitcoin is, it would be run, controlled, issued by, monitored by the central bank, the Federal Reserve in the United States. So if a central government controls their currency, right, the monetary currency, if they don't like Maria, for example, all they have to do is, in effect, flip the switch and you're demonetized. You no longer have access to currency. You can't pay your rent. You can't travel. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't educate your children. You're demonetized. This is what the CCP is pioneering in China right now, in an event to control their citizens. And the other reason, to answer your original question, is why Russia and China are doing this, and a few other authoritarian regimes. It's in order to skirt sanctions and to get away from the world dependency on the US dollar. So we'll see what happens. For example, the United States, the Biden administration had directed the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, to explore this, and was on track to issue a U.S. central bank digital currency. But the Trump administration said, no, we're not going to do it.
How Trump administration is aware what's going on, what they are their fight back strategy in this issue?
Yeah, the Trump administration, although they, and I don't want to speak for the administration at all, they fully support, Bitcoins and cyber currencies in general. They just do not want the U.S. government to be involved with the issuance of a central bank, a Federal Reserve digital currency.
Let's go to the Gulf states and the financial compliance. How do you assess the progress Gulf countries have made in AML and counter-terror financing, and where do gaps still exist? And let's talk about the biggest GCC countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE.
Well, it's funny you mentioned those, because I used to have quite a bit of experience in both countries. I started traveling out to the Gulf area about 1990, 1991. Money laundering was not well known in the region then. I remember talking to SAMA, the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, about 1991, and holding conversations with them about money laundering. As I said, money laundering was really not recognized. The Saudis didn't think they had a problem. I remember they held the region's first anti-money laundering conference in Riyadh, again, about 1991. I used to go to the UAE, specifically Dubai, many, many times. Before 9/11, I remember talking to Governor al-Suwaidi of the central bank about anti-money laundering, about the threat of hawala, about other things. This was before 9/11. So in that respect, they've made tremendous amount of progress from the early 1990s. And then after 9/11, they were very, very interested in putting in place structures to help combat money laundering and terror finance. They adopted the FATF 40 recommendations to combat money laundering. What I would say, though, today, now, 30, 40 years later, is on paper, they have pretty good regimes. We call them regimes, anti-money laundering regimes, anti-money laundering programs. Where I still find fault with them in the countries in the Gulf is they don't really use their initiative. Meaning, if the US government or the British government says to the UAE authorities, we believe there's money laundering here, would you help us out? They might actually
they move.
help. They move.
But they
but
don't
they
do
will
it by
not
themselves. They don't
They
do the
won't do it
initiative.
themselves. And if I remember years ago, I would go into the UAE, I'd go to Dubai, and I'd see all kinds of money laundering, all kinds of things going on that were suspicious. I was an outsider. If I saw it, they certainly know it, but they just won't police themselves.
I mean, maybe sometimes this is why there is alliance, so alliance can help each other. Sometimes maybe if you see it because you're an American and you're an expert, maybe some of people who are in charge of this kind of fraud or money laundering, they are not as much as expert as Americans.
Well, that's part of it. We gave them a lot of training, a lot of technical assistance. That's part of it. But the real reason is because, and I'm not pointing my fingers just at the UAE. There's countries around the world. There's too many people that benefit from the status quo. They don't want to look under the rocks. They're benefiting from the system.
My final question is, what must change now? If you could recommend 3 urgent policy actions the next US administration, I mean, for now, for Trump administration should take to cripple illicit financial networks globally. What would be the 3 recommendations?
Well, we talked about trade-based money laundering. So what I would urge the Trump administration or the next administration to work with the Financial Action Task Force and to make combating trade-based money laundering FATF recommendation number 41. Because in the world of what we call AML, anti-money laundering, counterterrorism finance, it's the FATF that makes things happen. And if the FATF says we're going to emphasize trade-based money laundering and make give it its own recommendation, I think that would go a long ways in focusing renewed attention on the issue. The other thing I would urge is to really go back to the basics of enforcement. If you look right now at the amount of money laundering going on in the world today, it's roughly 4 or 5 trillion. Do you know that we actually recover far less than 1%? Less than 1%. A colleague of mine, Raymond Baker, once said, total failure is less than a decimal point away. And to be a money laundering today, at least in the United States, because of the magnitude of the problem, to be caught, to be investigated, prosecuted, and convicted, you have to be really stupid or really, really unlucky. Your chances of getting away with it are very, very good. For example, the fraud problem in the United States right now. So I would urge to go back to the basics. We talk about following the money. We need to actually do that because we spend too much effort going after the people, the bad guy, the drug kingpin, right? The criminal or the product, for example, drugs or stolen cars or whatever it is, instead of the money. But they're doing the crime because of the money, and we're not really focusing on the money.
And you should focus as well on the complicit people around, like drivers, neighbors, it's not only it's a network. I mean, it's maybe people are not suspicious, but they can be involved and deeply involved.
Right.
Yeah, and my
And,
question,
and
did you work on Hezbollah or Lebanon in any way?
no, I was only in Lebanon a couple of times during my career. And as far as Hezbollah, I mean, I'm aware of the organization, but I never had any direct experience, any direct dealings doing counterterrorism and stuff. But just to go back, you answered the question, what are the three things I would
Yes.
recommend? And then the last thing I would recommend is for the United States to work very closely with our foreign counterparts to recognize China is the biggest money laundering threat in the world today. Because honestly, Maria, I think that's where the CCP is most vulnerable. Most people don't recognize their involvement in transnational crime.
This is the number one
But
threat.
we should embarrass them. They are an ongoing criminal enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, understood. Thank you so much, John Cassara, for this interview and this invaluable insights. You have a deep
You're very
experience in
welcome.
tracking illicit money and financing and follow the money that terrorist organizations are using. Thank you so much for this interview and your expertise sharing with my audience. I appreciate it a lot.
You're very welcome, Maria. Thank you.